We're going to get started here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's Portals Community Call, May 2026. We're back for another great session with Nicholas Hayduke, who is on the line and ready to go. Before I give things over to him, just a couple of quick notes for everybody listening. First, we do welcome your questions. Enter them at any time while Nick is presenting today. We'll be keeping an eye on that, whether it's about um, the feature topic of the month, or really anything else, right? And we're also recording today's event, so it will be on demand shortly, and we'll be letting everyone know when that is available. So without any further delay, Nick, I'm going to hand things over to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We've got a fun topic: web application firewall, or WAF, as they're known. So, um, yeah, let's get going here. So I think we have some fun news as well. So we'll get started with just a quick intro. For those of you who might be new here, my name is Nicholas Hayduke. I am with Engineered Code Consulting Inc. here in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. I am a Microsoft MVP, and I've been focusing on Power Pages for the last 15, 17 years or so, since about 2009. My career began with ADX Studio, which was the company that originally built Power Pages, and it was acquired by Microsoft way back in 2015. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, you can follow us and all the kind of the different content we do on X. You can follow us on our YouTube channel, where we do a 2-minute or roughly 2-minute tip every Tuesday. We've got our blog. We've also got crm.audio, where the Refresh the Cache podcast is hosted. So all those things, generally, I'm focusing on Power Pages. And so, yeah, if you're looking for Power Pages content, check out any of those options. As always, just want to say thank you to Jason and his team at MS Dynamics Worlds for being such great hosts and collaborators on this endeavor that we started on back in 2020. It's been a great ride, and just really happy for everything they do to get the word out and host us and help coordinate everything every month. So really appreciate everything that Jason and his team does over there at MS Dynamics World. In terms of our agenda, we've got a little bit of news this month. Today's topic, as I've mentioned, is web application firewall. We will reveal the date and time of our next call, and there will be an opportunity for Q&A. So let's look at today's news. So in terms of the releases from the Power Pages product team that we get from the announcements on their blog, we got one which is 3 new AI skills for GitHub Copilot and Claude Code CLI. So the ability to add server logic, add cloud flows, and integrated. I think I may have stopped. Let me actually check that one. What is that? I must have got distracted and didn't finish the typing out that slide. Let's bring that up here. That should say integrated backend, which, according to the documentation, analyzes your prototype, determines the right approach for each feature, and orchestrates the complete build sequence. So it's talking about Web API, server logic, or Cloudflow. That's interesting. Sorry about that. That should say integrated backend. If you're not using GitHub Copilot or Claude Code CLI as part of your development, you're probably doing more work than you need to. So definitely suggest you look into those options. The other one is a more secure SharePoint integration. So it's been a while since the SharePoint integration has seen any updates. This one doesn't really introduce any new functionalities that end users would notice, but what it does is the account that's being used to talk to kind of SharePoint behind the scenes now has kind of a tighter scope. I believe before, the permissions it would get would be the access to the entire site collection, and now it's kind of site specific. So with the in the interest of security best practices of kind of least privileges, they've kind of reduced the scope of the permissions required by that by the user accessing SharePoint. So just kind of limiting the scope there a little bit. So So yeah, those were the two things that have been raised since we last met about a month ago. Like I said, the GitHub Copilot or Claude Code, like all the AI stuff, I'm starting to think it's maybe not a fad, and I know that my team internally here have seen great productivity enhancements by using these types of tools. So if you're not already on it, now may be the time. All right, let's move on to today's topic. And today's topic is web application firewall. So, what is a web application firewall? It's a security system that sits between a web server and the internet. Um, what makes it more than just a regular firewall? So, like a regular firewall would kind of be able to like block, specific, maybe there's specific protocols or ports and that sort of thing. What makes a web application firewall a web application firewall is that it can do it understands HTTP or HTTPS traffic. So it can do things, it can monitor and filter HTTP traffic and kind of look for common exploits that are kind of specific to websites that are being hosted. So it can look for those common attack vectors and look for typical ways that you might attack a web server that are kind of very specific to web servers. So that's what makes something a web application firewall or a WAF. A WAF is that it is specifically kind of targeted at servers that are hosting HTTP traffic and can do things that a regular firewall may not include. So, what does this mean for Power Pages? Well, the good news is that Power Pages does have a WAF built in. It's actually powered by Azure Front Door. So, for those of you who don't know, Power Pages is hosted in Azure. Probably wouldn't be a big surprise. Within Azure, there's an Azure web app that's hosting the actual kind of Power Pages web server. And so what Microsoft has done is that for every Power Page instance that's out there, what they do is they have the ability to essentially you're enabling Azure Front Door in front of it. Now, when I say everyone, I mean everyone that isn't a trial site. So this is something that obviously it costs the Power Pages team money to run Azure Front Door on their servers. So if you just have a trial site, you're not going to be able to enable the WAF. But for any non-trial site, you are able to. I'm trying to remember if you can enable WAF for developer. I think maybe you can for developer. But yeah, you're able to enable that WAF. And so again, that sits as a layer in between all the users that are attempting to access your site. And so you can see here, there's a WAF that's going to then go through and access the traffic is going to go through the WAF before getting to the actual Power Pages development, or so the Power Pages web servers. So what's great about the Power Pages WAF is that it is enabled with the simple click of a button. So within the Power Platform Admin Center, all you got to do is go into the performance and protection area for your Power Pages site and click the button from no to yes to do that. Now, you do need to be an admin for that particular environment to be able to do that, but it is really just kind of that simple. One thing that Microsoft has done recently is back in the day, in order to enable the web application firewall, you had to have the content delivery network, the CDN feature, enabled as well. So you can see here, I've got the WAF turned on without the CDN. That was not possible up until, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, before you would have to have turned on that CDN before the WAF option was even enabled. But they've removed that dependency, and so now you can just enable the WAF without the CDN, which is great because there were some customers that with the CDN was not something that their policies would allow. They with the CDN, your content is stored kind of across the globe in all these different places, and that may not have been acceptable by some organizations' policies. but it's, we'll get to this in the best practices, but it's always a good idea to have the WAF turned on. So it's nice that even if your organization doesn't want to take advantage of the CDN functionality, which is great unto itself, but I would say much more important that you have the WAF turned on, and so it's nice that those can be independent now. So yeah, it really just is that simple here. I'll just kind of bring it up and kind of show how that works. So if I go to the Power Platform Admin Center here, close some of these things here. So all I've done is I've gone into Manage, and then I've gone into Power Pages, and then I'll open up my site here, and we'll see that that protection, performance and protection pane. And all you really got to do is click that button. It says yes. You can turn it off. It goes pretty quickly. It says no changes made in the last 1 year. So yeah, it's something that I've had turned on here for a while. So very easy to turn on. So that is that. Let's back here. So let's talk about configuring the WAF, because once it's turned on, and for when it kind of first came out, that's kind of what the options were. You just kind of turn it on and you kind of got what you got. But now that you've turned it on, there are actually lots of ways that you can configure the WAF. When it comes to a WAF, generally what we're looking at are what rules, like what kind of traffic is it looking for. And so there are different rules that you can configure as part of your WAF configuration. So the first thing I'll say here is that the security agent can help according to the documentation. Now, I'll be honest with you, my experience with this is I guess interesting. Let me see if it's any better today. So if I go into here and I go into my site, edit. The last time I was in here when I was prepping for this, the security agent didn't know my WAF was turned on, so that didn't really help. But let me just see here, see if it's kind of figured it out here. So you can see here, I'll go into kind of what these settings are here in a second. But again, we've got the security agent here on the right-hand side. It is in preview, but I can say, hey, web application firewall, please help me with this. So it's assessing this, it's doing all this sort of stuff. So when I did this yesterday, it said, it says it. Excellent. Okay. So even though my WAF was enabled before, it was telling me that it wasn't enabled. So it wouldn't really help me because I couldn't do any of these extra rules. But you can see here the security agent is saying it's enabled. I've got logging. It's providing some recommendations. So you can work with the security agent to help you with your WAF setup. You can see here there's a whole bunch of things going on here. Now, let me just go back here. So the security agent can help, but what can it help with? When it comes to rules, and again, primarily when you think of a WAF, you're thinking about what are the rules that, what is it blocking? What is it allowing through the firewall? That's really kind of what it comes down to. So there are kind of two different types of rules. So there's managed rules and there are custom rules. Managed rules are the ones that are kind of created out of the box by, and they're essentially features within Azure Front Door, where you basically can go through a list of like, here's a rule for cross-site scripting, and it's like you don't have to invent these yourself. There's a whole set of rules that you can just enable on your site. Custom rules are when you want to kind of build something yourself, and we'll get into this, that are primarily focused around blocking things based on IP address, geolocation, or specific URLs. And then we'll also, once we kind of finish with the rules, we'll talk about the firewall logs as well. So let's talk about these managed rules. So again, these managed rules are a set of out-of-the-box rules created by Microsoft. You'll see them essentially, again, because this is really just Azure Front Door, that product being used here, you'll see kind of the rules that come from Azure Front Door. So it covers areas like cross-site scripting, protocol attacks, local/remote file inclusion, and many more. And so you can manage which of these rules you want turned on or turned off within the Design Studio. So let's look at that. So I'm going to jump back to the Design Studio here again. So if I kind of go back to home, I would go into my particular Power Pages site in the Design Studio. And then under the security area, we've got the web application firewall. So I'm going to just tell the security agent to go away here. So you can see that it does say it's enabled for the site. And if I go into manage rules, we have this list of rules that Microsoft has for us. Now, these are the ones that are enabled. And then within these rules, there are essentially like kind of these sub rules in here. So you do have the ability to go in here and turn on or turn off these individual rules. For the most part, you can kind of find more information about these rules. 9903, so let's just say 9903, then it was 00, what was it here? 9903 0001. 9903 0001. So you can sometimes kind of find more specific rule map to these rules that we have within here. So you can see we're in the web application firewall. This is kind of Azure documentation. This isn't even Power Pages. This is all kind of specific to the Azure Front Door product. So you can go in here and say, hey, I actually don't want this rule in here. I can say disable selected, and I can disable these. Now we'll get into this with the best practices. As far as I'm concerned, until you run into a particular error with one of these rules, my recommendation is just turn them all on. I don't generally claim to know more about security than the folks who are handling Azure Front Door. So my suggestion is turn them all on and only turn one off if you have some kind of very interesting scenario that's like, hey, we're blocked because this particular rule is on. But for the most part, I'd say turn them on. Now I do know I can say here, I can click add new rule. I can say manage rules. So there are some rules here that I haven't added yet. I believe these are kind of new rules. So I think you kind of get the rules that are kind of defaulted when the site is first created or when you kind of turn on the WAF, but then it's not going to enable or it's not going to add new rules to your site without you kind of knowing. So as more managed rules are made available, they'll be made available in this section, but I believe you have to kind of enable them manually. They don't automatically are added until you do so, which makes sense. That's probably the right way to do that. But yeah, so these are the rules. Again, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what most of these rules, like how all these work. We've got these cross-site scripting rules. Again, for the most part, I would suggest just enabling them all. And I haven't seen too many people run into specific scenarios where they say, hey, they've got to turn off something specifically. So yeah, those are the managed rules that I think for most people really just comes down to when you're starting up when you're kind of releasing a site, your production site, turn on the WAF, make sure all the managed rules are turned on, and for the most part, you should be good to go. That's the kind of protection that you get out of the box with by turning on this feature. Now, in terms of custom rules, so custom rules allow you to do some stuff that's very specific, and basically it works on the kind of a priority of your rules, and each rule I'll either kind of allow or deny based on whatever you kind of set in terms of the match. So in terms of matching, you can match based on geolocation, which allows you to select like which countries you want to allow or deny. You can match based on IP address, and I think there's some kind of wildcards that you can do, as well as the request URI. So what is the URL, the path that the user is requesting? So you can create these rules that allow you to essentially restrict access to your site. There's also rate limit options. So rather than like just completely blocking people, which is what the match rule generally does, you kind of it's either a yes or no. With rate limit, you can set the maximum number of requests based on one of those matches. So you can say, hey, all the people from Canada, we only allow 1,000 requests from Canada every 1 minute or 5 minutes. So that's what the rate limit does. And we'll look at creating those here in just a second. Now, just note that it can take up to an hour for this to kind of propagate, depending on because this does kind of goes out throughout the interwebs. So there's a note that says it can take up to an hour for this to propagate when you make a change like this. I think especially if you have the CDN and you're protected in that way. So just something to keep an eye on. It's not something that if you've changed a rule, you may not see it kind of immediately take effect. So let's look at kind of creating some of these custom rules and kind of how that works. So if we go to custom rules, you'll see I have a few. We've got a few. I got a couple in here just for fun. You can see again here. What's important here is the priority. So I have one here called allow all. If I go into C and I see edit this rule, this one is the ability to, or I just named it allow all. So it does a match based on this. So this is basically it'll match every single page, and I've got an allow on it. Now, what I did last night just to play around with this is I put in my own the IP address of my house, and I actually put a deny in. Now, at this point, if I access this as my house, it would work because this is the first rule that runs. This one has the priority, and so it would match on every URL, and it would allow. Now, if I were to swap these, then if I were to swap these, then I couldn't access from my house, but everyone else would be able to do that. Now, of course, if there's no rule preventing you, there's no need to have an allow all at the bottom. Let me see if I can find, because the documentation has some good examples of this. Power Pages WAF, where it was about kind of allowing everyone from a country. So let's go into here. So I want to set up a WAF rule to ensure that my site only receives traffic from customers from the US. So they said in order to do that, we want to set up two rules. And so the first rule you would have is an allow for the United States. So you could do a match rule of geolocation based in the United States, and you say allow. And then the rule after that is request URI, that is deny. And so if it doesn't match this first rule, it's then going to go down to the next one, which is a deny for basically everyone. So that's how you can kind of chain these rules together. So if I were to, let me just delete this rule. See if we can get that to save. It says this may take 2 or 3 minutes to complete. We'll see how long this takes to save. I think generally what you would most often have is a deny rule kind of as the lowest priority, and then what you're doing is you're adding rules above that. Say, hey, I want to let this in, I want to let this in, or you're having a rule that just you're kind of listing the ones that you want to deny. So in the case where you only want the United States, in theory, you could have an allow on or a deny on every country that isn't the United States. You could check every single other box, but that would take a while. So that's why it's just kind of easier to do I'm going to allow the US and then put a deny on everyone else at kind of lower priority. Let me just go check this other documentation. So this one is about the rate limit. So my site receives an average of 1,500 requests in 5 minutes. I want to configure a WAF rule to protect my site from any DDoS attacks. Set the rule. So this one is allow 1,500 requests in 5 minutes, rate limit. And so this is on every single page. So, and this one, basically after those 1,500 requests it's going to deny any single page. We'll talk about the logs here in a second, but here's kind of two examples in the Microsoft documentation about how to set up these custom rules. Let's see if this is finished yet. Okay, so changes have been saved, and it will take 1 to 2 hours to take effect. So I can create a new rule here. If I want to add a custom rule, I'm going to call this, I'm going to say deny, I don't know, which country should we deny? Or let's say, I'm going to say allow Canada. I'm going to say geolocation. Now, when you select geolocation, it's still going to ask whether you want to match based on the remote address or the socket address. I believe the remote address will be the IP address of the actual kind of the network the user is coming from, whereas the socket address will be a proxy server if one happens to exist between you and the thing. Again, the geolocation is still using the IP address, and generally you're going to use remote address here. But once you do that, then you get country or region, and you get this giant list of countries. So I can select Canada, and I can say, for that, I'm going to allow. And then this one, I'm going to edit this rule, and I'm going to say, I'm going to change this to deny all, and I'm going to do that. Now, if I were to leave it, don't like that my capitalization is off there. There we go, deny all. Now again, if I were to leave it this way, the lower number is first priority. So what's going to happen is this is going to deny everyone. So what we need to do is we need to flip this order and say decrease priority. I know it seems a little counterintuitive, but now this one is the lower number. Let me see if this will save. That should kind of flop the order. And then, so if anyone is coming from Canada, they'll be allowed in. And if they're coming from anywhere else, they will be denied. See if we can get that to save. While that is saving, I think the rest of the thing here is that's just the logs. And we've got that enabled. Just wait a second here for this to finish up. Maybe what we'll do is jump over to the firewall logs, and then we'll come back and look at the rate limiting a little bit. So if you kind of want to see what's going on, you can enable firewall logs. So these are enabled on that same page that we were just looking at. You can select the retention period. So if you wanted to keep logs for 5 days, I think it's maybe up to 30. And then what you can do is then download the firewall logs based on a particular date range. So why don't we take a look at that? We'll see if our changes have been saved. Yeah, so there's our change have been saved. We're going to refresh here. Edit the site. Right, so now you can see that Allow Canada is higher priority, and this will kind of block traffic from anywhere that's not Canada. So we'll talk about the firewall logs in here in a second. I just want to finish up on the rate match. So if we say rate limit, and so then again, you can say whether it's in a 1 minute period or 5 minutes, how many requests to allow within that. So let's just say we want to allow 1,000 people. Let's say 100 people from the United States. And we will say do that, and that's going to put it in our list as well. So again, it just depends on the priority. If you kind of put it too low and someone matches up here, then if you hit an allow, or if you match on one of these rules, that's going to kind of take priority over the lower ones. No questions. All right. So let's talk about the logs. So again, configuring this, basically turn them on, retention period, 90 days. I think its default is 30 days, but up to a maximum of 90 days. So then you can say download. I'm going to download everything for the last couple of days. Download. Save. And let's open this up here. So you can see all the different URLs that come in and which rule which rule took effect here. Oh, you got some interesting things. Home action.php. Yeah, that's not a real thing. CGI-bin. Very interesting. GraphQL. Yeah. So those are some interesting requests to the server. WP-JSON. Yeah, I think it's a WordPress server maybe. But anyways, you can kind of see these, and so this is super helpful if you've got a relatively complex rule set, and you're trying to figure, hey, this person should be allowed, but why are they not? You can kind of see in here whether someone kind of matches or not matches, and what the action is for all those different requests. So super handy to get access to those types of to those logs. All right, so that kind of covers what we get out of the box with. Oh, did I lose my current slide? Okay, yeah, that kind of covers what we get out of the box with WAF in Power Pages. Now, what if you decide, hey, this is this is great, this is nice, this is easy to set up, but I've got some advanced things I need to be able to do, and these options that we've looked at don't cover all my use cases and don't meet all my requirements. You could always put your own WAF in front of Power Pages. Microsoft does have documentation that we'll quickly scroll through here in a second of how to put up essentially a custom implementation of Azure Front Door in front of Power Pages. And so whether it's whether it's Azure Front Door or another service, Cloudflare, lots of other kind of CDN or WAFs out there. If you want to put your own in front of it, probably is possible. But I would say it's not for the faint of heart. It is for someone who has already kind of configured WAF. Like if you're a specialist with WAFs, you could probably figure it out. But let's just take a look at the documentation. You'll see kind of what I mean in terms of setting that up. Let me just find front door. There we go. So I'll just quickly so here's the documentation on setting it up. And so what do you need to do? First, you set up the Azure Front Door endpoint. Then you configure, then you set up, and so you would need a custom domain name. Then you set up the site as an origin server, and that's in Azure Front Door origin. And then you set up the routing rules to cache static requests. Then you set up the route configuration. Then you set up a rule set. Still setting up routing rules. Now it's just the part where you're starting to create your own WAF rules. So you can create your own rules to analyze the incoming requests, and this is where again you'd probably have additional options that you don't get out of the box with Power Pages to go in here. And then you could also set up your Power Pages site to only accept traffic from your Azure Front Door. You use this by just securing it using the IP address of the Power Page. So you can use the IP address restrictions to make sure that only traffic going through Azure Front Door can get to your Power Pages site. Again, something to consider if you are, if someone on the team has experience with web application firewall, if you want to set something up yourself. Where we see this mostly come up is some kind of, often an external team will run some sort of pen test or some sort of testing script that says, hey, you need to do this, or you need to have this kind of rule turned on or whatever. And it's like, okay, I can't do that exact rule with Power Pages. And so people start putting up their own WAF in front of things just to meet some sort of probably not that critical of a rule. Obviously never a bad idea to have extra security, but all this extra overhead compared to just what you're getting out of the box here is pretty solid as well. So I would say unless you're dealing with information that is especially confidential, I would say what you're getting out of the box here is generally kind of more than sufficient and would kind of meet the the best practices. there's a reason that these are the rules that Microsoft has decided to include as part of the out of the box options. And so yeah, I would say for the most part you're going to be okay with those out of the box rules. So but again, if you really need to, or perhaps your company standards are, hey, we already have a WAF, we're already using Cloudflare or whatever, and we want to use it with Power Pages, you definitely can figure that stuff out. But I would I'd be careful. I'd want to make sure if there's an actual real need for something that goes beyond what you get out of the box, because what you get out of the box is pretty solid. So let me just check to see if we have any questions. Nothing yet. All right, back here. So we've talked about the other WAFs. So again, what are your best practices? Turn it on. You should almost definitely have a WAF in front of your site. I don't know what the argument for not a WAF would be in front of your site. Again, if for whatever reason you're in that small percentage of people where the out of the box WAF isn't sufficient, then set up a custom one. But for the most part, this is kind of a no-brainer in terms of like, check the box, turn it on, enable all the rules, and the vast majority of people are, it's going to be safer, and there's going to be literally probably no downsides. And then enable all the managed rules, again, unless you have a specific reason to turn off, like to turn certain rules off. So the way that we approach it is, yeah, turn them all on. If during testing you discover that you've done something really kind of different that is picked up by one of those rules, then maybe you have to turn it off. I can't even give you an example because I don't, like, it's not something that we've run into where those out of the box rules were causing us headaches. But yeah, beyond that, I would say enable all those rules and wait for one of those rules to get in, to be a pain before kind of turning it off. I think is kind of the easiest approach. So yeah, if you take anything away from this presentation is, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything extra. Best practice standard now to have a WAF on your site. Power Pages makes that very easy to do, and you really have no good reason, no good excuse not to turn on a WAF on your site. In, I would say, 99.9% of cases, it's just as simple as clicking that button, and you don't need custom rules. Generally, just turn all the managed rules, and that just adds an easy layer of safety to your Power Pages site. All right, well, that's what I want to cover. It's a little bit of a shorter one just because it is just that simple for those people who may need some custom rules. Again, that's more usually around the geolocation stuff. It generally is saying, hey, we want to restrict access to a certain country, or restrict access from a certain, like, we don't want, and often it'll be kind of in response to some sort of like bot attack or something. You can identify where the traffic is coming from, and you can throw that WAF in front of it, so it's not even getting to your the web server to kind of protect the web server. But yeah, super important. I'm not sure. It is something we still see people kind of don't realize what it is, how easy it is to turn on. So hopefully you're seeing a lot of uptick. I know that I think now when you convert, we're going to kind of default the WAF to being turned on. So yeah, again, I just think it's kind of best practice to have it turned on. So if you don't have it turned on, please do. All right, our next call is scheduled for June 18th of next month, same time. Just going to pause here and see if there are any questions. I don't see any in the questions block, but while I do my final thanks here for Jason and NMS Dynamics World, I will just ask the question. If there are any questions, please kind of post them there. Again, it can be about our topic today or any other Power Pages questions you might have. Feel free to drop in there. But in the meantime, I will say thanks to Jason and his team. And I would say we can wait about 10 seconds here. And if we see nothing, Jason, I think we could probably wrap it up there for today.
All right, sounds good, Nick. And yeah, we'll be posting information on the recording soon as well. Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
not seeing anything else.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for attending, and hope to see you next month.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.